yourself bound in my trap. Now that you're awake, I would like to play a game.
Would like? Oh, that's awful polite. Well, thank you.
Excuse me, I misspoke. I want to play a game.
That's the scary one.
You've lived your life unscathed while others around you suffered, siphoning off of a criminal's fortune to pay for your frenzy. Now you must pay. In blood.
Blood?
This trap will put you into the ground 1 inch for every minute you do not discuss the topic I've chosen.
So it's not really so much a game as it is you're coercing me with force.
The topic I've chosen for you is...
The Saw franchise? Saw franchise, yeah. Yeah, guessing you're more Hoffman than Kramer? I'm not gonna do what you want.
So be it.
Oh. Saw was released in 2004. It had a lot of sequels. Hopefully describing the first one well enough means I can get off for good behavior. Dick. Saw is a delightful film that opens up with a bunch of green people on a black table. If only that were true. Okay, so we open up with Dr. Gordon and Adam S. Well, Adam S. is just woken up and Dr. Gordon says, hey, we're trapped in this little place, okay? And Adam S. and Dr. Gordon keep getting instructions from some strange outside force, and there's a body in the middle of the floor who's face down, and he has a gun, and there's tape recorders, and a bunch of nonsense ensues. Well, we learn throughout the course of the film that there is someone called the Jigsaw Killer. And the Jigsaw Killer victimizes people who he believes are wasting their lives so he can give them a better chance at, life. Life to him is just the actual act of living and appreciating it, but these people have to make sacrifices to get out of these traps / games, and his ideology and methodology is shaky at best, but I digress. So, some of the people we see die by John Kramer. Oh, shoot, I spoiled. It's John Kramer. Okay, John Kramer, he's a cancer patient of Dr. Gordon. He's the guy face down in the middle. That's the big twist of the movie. All right, Saw spoilers abound. Okay, so John Kramer, he victimizes a lot of people as Jigsaw. One of them being Jeff Rimbauer, Jeff R, which is a ridiculous name for a character, by the way. He gets a real nasty case of getting completely murdered. Now you may be asking yourself, how? How does this guy get completely murdered? Well, he doesn't, and not this one. Okay, he doesn't in this one. Jeff actually gets away because of the brave machinations of David Tapp and Steven Singh, who are the detectives signed on the Jigsaw case. Jeff's trap is interrupted in the middle of their investigation. So Jeff gets saved. David gets his throat kind of cut by Jigsaw. Only a little bit, that's fine. And then Steven walks into a trap that blows his head off with a shotgun. So I guess Steven's dead. Steven's done for. And David blames himself, and so throughout the whole movie we kind of get this flash forward, flashback. I'm on the force, I'm off the force, blah, blah, blah. And currently the person working the Jigsaw case is Allison Carey, I think. And she's doing just a wonderful job. So, who are some of the people that John Kramer does victimize? Well, you got Mark W. Mark W. He got poison put on him, you know, just kind of gently put on there, and then it killed him, which I can't really, I guess, show with these guys. So I'm just gonna fold them up like poison does to you. Just folds you up in a bunch of pieces. So there. So Mark's gone. Then he victimized Paul Leahy, who John Kramer actually worked with at the toy company before he became Jigsaw. Now, Paul slit his wrists, and good old JK over there thought, hey, you got so much going for you. And so he just lubed him up with a bunch of butter and put him in a bunch of barbed wire, and he kind of, I guess, lacerated himself to death. I don't know, there's not really yeah, for the reputation that this first movie has, there's not really a whole bunch of, like, excessive gore. It's just that the gore is presented very painfully and realistically. So Paul's gone. But the most famous trap, which we learned from a survivor. So John Kramer takes Amanda Young, who's a heroin addict. And Amanda Young, she gets something called the reverse bear trap put on her head. Now, I don't want to spoil for you what the reverse bear trap what it looks like and stuff, and hopefully you're watching these movies before seeing this video, but Amanda Young has to kill Donnie G. Well, she doesn't know she has to kill him, but he's got the key to the bear trap inside his tummy, and she's got to just pull it out and dig it out and unlock the bear trap before she gets affected. So she does, but the problem is, Donnie was her drug dealer, and so she had to betray that. But she comes off scot-free and gets interviewed specifically by David Tapp and then later Allison Carey to say, like, hey, what is the MO of the Jigsaw killer? Because I feel like Dr. Gordon may be the Jigsaw killer. Not so. See, Dr. Gordon was being followed by Adam, who's a photographer, and his family, Diana and Allison right here, different Allison from the cop Allison, this is the wife Allison, are being accosted by Zepp Hindle. Now, Zepp is notable because he's got the Saw theme named after him, and that's, pretty standard. So, Zepp attacks Allison and Diana, holds them hostage, but Zepp is part of the game too. And Adam also knows that Dr. Gordon has been cheating on his wife with Carla, who's a medical student, but she's not really important right now. But she will be later, sort of. And the whole thing comes to a head when good old David Tapp is chasing the Jigsaw killer and he gets killed, and it's sad, and it's like, it's not very clear, but whatever, it's Danny Glover and he was simply too old for this shit, so he dies. And at least it wasn't like by a predator blast or nothing. And then Zepp has to confront Adam because Dr. Gordon is provided what a lot of the namesake of the series, he is provided a saw. A hand saw, and he's shackled right there at the ankle, and he just has to saw himself out, and he crawls away to parts unknown. And in that amount of time, Zepp gets shot, and it's sad, and he's dead. And then Adam gets the gun, and John Kramer's like, game over. And then he shuts the door, and then Adam, screams, and he's in agony, and who knows? Maybe Adam survived. Maybe all these people survived, and they're in Saw 2. Dr. Gordon, John Kramer, Jeff, Carla, they all ended up being friends at the end. And that's really what's important. And then there were no more movies after that. Now, there ought to be another cassette tape around here somewhere. Maybe save that for later.
Here, you can use this one.
Thank you.
Avery, it seems you've passed the first test. I will now offer you a brief respite. You see, I too know of culture. And although I am seen as a pariah among many, as my status,
Am I having the puppet nightmare again?
I can indulge in those words.
Yeah.
Will not get copyright notice.
Have you been there the whole time?
Don't mind me. I'm just doing this for extra university credit.
I'm not even good enough to get the teacher one. I gotta get the student worker one.
Well, if that's how you feel about it, how about you and I play some video games? The Saw video games. Ooh, spooky Saw transition. I'm really scared in this one. Ooh.
So, the Saw video games, I guess, could be canon. Just like the prequel comic, Saw Rebirth, which is about John Kramer's origin and how he decides to become Jigsaw, even though there's some issues that go on later. With a lot of franchises, the primary canon is however the world first appeared, and so the film is the primary canon. But considering nobody dies in Saw Rebirth, at least I hope not. The Saw video games, I'm not going to really cover the plot because there's honestly not much there. But all you got to know is John Kramer and his pig heads in the two video games. There's one for each video game. It's important because it says, hey, there's actually, John Kramer has accomplices, but not like well, seemingly not like how Zepp was accomplished in the last one, but rather there are people who have joined him on his crusade to be the sharpest tool in the shed.
Somebody once told me.
Essentially, we've got our old pals, Jeff and Carla. Remember them? Remember them? Jeff is the one who Steven Singh saved, and he doesn't make it in these video games. And Carla's the one that Gordon was cheating on his wife with. She also doesn't make it. Fortunately, they are joined by all these people here. You got all these fellas here who. And then there's Zeke, who maybe shows up in Spiral? No, I'm not in Spiral. That's what Zeke says. Zeke says, I'm not in Spiral. No, yeah, these guys don't make it. These guys get all, they're dead. They're all messed up. And then Solomon maybe gets away. Who knows? No one really cares, so we'll just kind of crush him like that. But, you know, he could survive. Then you get Steven Singh's widow, Melissa, who's thankful, and Jennings F., who survives the trap. And then you got David Tapp's son, Michael, and he could become an acolyte of Pinhead, but considering he never gets brought up again in the movies, then maybe he doesn't become an acolyte of Pinhead. See, aren't you glad we had that aside? Aren't you glad you know everyone who survives a Saw video game? Let me tell you something. There's only one person in the Saw video game who makes it to Saw 2, and that's John Kramer. Except no substitutes. Except no Jigsaw substitutes.
Or are you in for a surprise?
Welcome to Saw 2. So, we got Eric Matthews, who's played by but most famously, Donnie Wahlberg of New Kids on the Block fame. And he's also in Dead Silence, which is a really good movie that I recommend checking out. Anyway, Eric has to bail out his son, Daniel. And Daniel will go over here with this group of people, and I'm sure they'll be fine. But then, Eric's informant, Michael, because, you know, Eric is a detective, like all the cops that chase Jigsaw are detectives. Just even if they're not, they are. So he's got an informant named Michael, and Michael gets put in what fans of the series like to call the Venus flytrap mask. And essentially it goes across his head like that, as you can see from the side view. It's very, very detailed. And if he doesn't unlock the mask with a key that has been surgically implanted underneath his eye, he gets his whole face skin torn just right asunder, and he doesn't survive. Yeah, then suddenly Eric Matthews' son is missing, so all the cops, including Allison from the last one and Daniel Rigg, who I'm sure will be important later, find John Kramer, and they're like, where the hell are these people? Where's his son? And John Kramer tells them that his son is in a house with a whole bunch of other people playing another game. But John Kramer specifically wants to talk to Detective Matthews. He says, if you sit here with me and listen to me talk, you will find your son alive. And Eric Matthews, who's just a hothead, as them Wahlbergs are, gets really, really upset and tells Daniel to heckin' screw off and Allison to screw off, that he's gonna go find his son. So he goes around and beats the shit out of John Kramer and makes him tell him where the house is. All the while, all these people in the house are learning they're part of a Jigsaw trap. But how do they know they're in a Jigsaw trap, and how do they survive? Well, Amanda Young, who has already been tested, is in the trap with them. So, that's obviously a big bummer. It kind of seems counterintuitive to what the big J-Man's whole plan is, and I don't mean the big J-Man being Jesus Christ. Although if he had to come up with certain traps about his vindictions and all that stuff, I'm sure there would be a lot more crucifixion involved in the Saw franchise. So one by one, people die. There's Gus. Gus gets he gets stabbed through the eye. He gets go clunk, that kind of thing. It was a little bit more than an eye right there, but forget it. Don't worry about it. Then you get good old, oh gosh, who is it that goes nuts? Oh yeah, Xavier, which is funny because he's the biggest guy in the house, but he's a little bitty tiny here because he didn't have much personality. Xavier just starts going absolutely apeshit, and for the people who are not succumbing to the gas, either die in a horrific way like Obi. Obi gets burned to death, which I guess we'll just... There we go. But Xavier realizes that the only way to get the needles of nerve gas, because that's apparently... There's not really... there are traps in the house. I don't know. It's really not a good MO. He gets the tattooed numbers on the back of all of them. Now, as you can probably see right now, they don't actually got tattooed numbers on the back of all of them. But that doesn't stop Laura from dying to the gas, and that doesn't stop Addison from dying to the gas. And when they die, it's put together that Daniel's dad, Eric Matthews, is a crooked cop. Kind of framed every single one of these people in the house to... kind of put them away so he could get more cop credit, I guess. I don't know. Maybe he can redeem it for a t-shirt. So, good old Daniel and Amanda pair off, because Amanda's been this before, and Amanda knows Daniel's just an innocent kid. And Jonas tries to stop Xavier, and Xavier goes all Negan on him and beats him to death with a spiked bat. And then Amanda Young and Daniel find themselves in just a room with a saw, and by saw I mean like a handsaw and chains and a decapitated foot, and I do believe the body of Adam, who did indeed die from the first movie of starvation. See, his tummy's all buckled in. So they're back in the original room. Amanda's never been in the room, but Amanda was from the original room, and Xavier's there, and Daniel takes the saw on the floor and slashes him right across the throat. He bleeds out, and then Eric Matthews, who's been finding his way through the house the whole time, gets to the room, and Daniel's not there. And neither is Amanda. Eric is confused, bewildered, puzzled. He doesn't know what's going on. And he comes to the bathtub where there is a body, and a pig head, but not from the Saw video games pig head, comes out and tranquilizes him. Eric Matthews is conscious, dunzo wherever he is, and it's revealed that the pig head who tranquilized him was Amanda Young. That's right, after the first Saw movie, Amanda Young became an acolyte or disciple of John Kramer. So, that's a bummer. Anyway, Daniel, Rigg, and Allison, who are still back at the original house where John Kramer was, realized that the video was on a loop, try to communicate with them, but, you know, when you're just so gosh darn, you know, he wasn't the one in the funky bunch, but he was still a new kid on the block, which gave him quite a lot of funk, and that funk just made him completely unaware of the fact they were watching all of the events in the house were pre-recorded. Old news. They weren't happening simultaneously with the movie, which is the first time in the franchise kind of bends the way time works. Not in such a way where they're cheating it yet, but where you can just kind of be like, oh, okay, you know, I shouldn't have believed that. And a safe opens up after the time runs out, and Daniel's safe, but Eric is now missing, along with Amanda Young and John Kramer, who have gotten away. And that is Saw 2, Sawed. So how am I supposed to believe you're not the real one?
I come from a long, prestigious line of Billy puppets.
Oh yeah? So what happens if I die? What do you say?
You just lost the game.
Okay, yeah, no, that tracks.
This one's a little, more confusing, but it's still scary. Ooh, I'm still trapped.
So, Saw 3, Sauced. Saw 3, Sauced is getting into the part of the franchise where it's like really complicated, but still kind of steady, you know? So, John Kramer go-aheads and has Amanda kidnap a nurse, Lynn. Because one thing, I've about good old John Kramer is he died of brain cancer. Guy has brain cancer, maybe accounts for all of his messed up morals. And Lynn is a doctor. She specializes in brain surgery, I guess. And Amanda brings her here. But all the police are hot on the trail of not Jill Tuck. Jill Tuck is Jigsaw's ex. We get introduced to her in this movie, but she's not really important. But all the police are hot on the trail of someone because Troy was the kill in the beginning of the movie. But Troy, he gets exploded, but had no way to actually escape his trap. And so all these people know that's not Jigsaw's MO. So someone else is involved. All the while we see Jeff and his daughter Corbett are mourning, and Jeff tells Corbett, stay out of Dylan's room, because Dylan was his son and her brother, and Dylan got just hit by a car, which is represented in the same way that Troy being in a room with a bomb going off looks before the movie. And Jeff is wasting away his life. He's wasting away his life to just kind of figure out, I wish I could get those people who let him get away, who hurt him and all that stuff. Well, Jigsaw sort of gives him the chance, but also Amanda, because while Lynn is operating on them, and by the way, if John's heart stops, there's a collar around Lynn's throat that will just detonate and explode. And so Jeff is kidnapped, and all the while, the good old police are busy because Allison Kay, who's been with us since the beginning, she gets in this really gnarly cage that just pegs into all of her holes along her ribs. And what she has to do is she has to reach her hand into a burning vat of acid to pull out a key, which is impossible. Another Amanda trap. And so she doesn't get it in time, and the hooks pull her rib cage from the inside out. Honestly, it's what a lot of people cite in the Saw series as gratuitous gore, but it's fantastic. It looks so gnarly, and she gets messed up. So Allison's done for the count, which means I think all the original police officers in the first movie are donezo now. Well, Jeff is going around and learns that there's a woman who's naked and literally being iced and then doused in water, and Jeff can free her, but she was the one who witnessed the drive-by, but that killed his son, but didn't testify. So he can either let her freeze or let her die. So he kind of enjoys it, and she freezes, and then he grabs the key and undoes her shackles. But right at the last minute, she shatters because I guess the human body is just made of, I don't know. It's really fascinating. But she shatters into a bunch of Danica, whatever. The next room has him with the judge that let go the person who was guilty of the drive-by, and he's getting drowned in half pig's blood and all that. And so once again, Jeff is questioning whether or not he should do this. All the while, Lynn is operating on John, and Amanda gets this very, very, very suspicious and odd letter, which we don't see yet. And it freaks her out, and she realizes she has to kill Lynn, because this whole time she's taunting Lynn to kill her, and John is telling Amanda, no, this is not part of my ideals, and blah, 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 blah. It's, it's well acted, but it's just kind of the same conversation over and over and over with them, and it pulls away from the really interesting idea of the father having to struggle with the death of his son and the people who brought the killer away from justice. Jeff decides to save Judge Halden, and then we come across Timothy. Now Timothy is, again, I would say Saw 3 probably has two of the most famous traps, because Timothy is locked in a system that has all of his joints and is going to twist him until he dies, unless Jeff frees him. And Timothy was the drunk driver guilty of killing Jeff's son. So the countdown starts, and like Timothy's like knees get bent, and then his elbows get bent and stuff, and it hurts, but it's still not going to kill him yet. And the judge is trying to get him out and says, "Please, just do it." Judge Halden's getting a handful of Jeff's D. Still a ridiculous name for a character, though. And so Jeff decides, okay, fine, I'll do it. But in trying to get the key, he inadvertently blows a chunk of Judge Halden's head off, which is like the biggest oopsie you can have. And then by the time he gets the key to save Timothy, the final thing turns and it just twists his head off, and it just... Jeff, I guess he got points for trying, because he was allowed to continue. And so Jeff gets to the final room right as Amanda shoots Lynn. But when Amanda shoots Lynn, it's revealed Lynn and Jeff are married. Dylan was their kid, and Lynn has been kind of gallivanting about with other men and stuff, and that's caused Jeff to be ostracized and all that. And so Lynn, who is shot, lands in Jeff's arms. Jeff, who has a gun and is upset at that, shoots Amanda. Amanda gets a shot through the heart, and Jeff's to blame. You give Saw a bad name. I guess farewell, Amanda Young. So Jeff doesn't know, though, even though Lynn is coughing up blood, Jeff doesn't know that Jigsaw's heartbeat, or John Kramer's heartbeat, is specifically tied to her collar. So John Kramer gives his final instructions and says, like,
I'm the man who killed your son the most, and see if you can find it in you to forgive me.
And Jeff goes, I forgive you. And then takes a buzzsaw and cuts John Kramer right in the throat right there. And John Kramer's heart stops, and gosh dang if Lynn's head just doesn't pop right off. And then he listens to another audio tape, because Jigsaw just has these suckers all around, I guess. And it says,
I'm the man who killed your child because I
kidnapped your daughter, bitch. I kidnapped your daughter and locked her away, and you're never gonna dash dang find her. And Jeff is distraught. Meanwhile, the cops are busy, I don't know, probably in another movie. Ooh. What's this one? Saw 4? Hold on. Saw 5, Saw 4. Okay. Saw 4. So we get introduced to almost no one at first. I mean, the opening scene has a guy whose mouth is sewn shut and all messed up, and then a guy whose eyes are sewn shut fight each other. The guy whose eyes gets bludgeoned to death by the guy with the mouth, and he's out. That was Trevor. Say bye, Trevor. Bye, Trevor. All right. So we follow Daniel Rigg. You remember him from Saw 2? He's the guy who needs to apparently learn that you can't save everybody. Well, the people he can't save is, well, there's a lot. See, here's the thing. We start out with the autopsy of John Kramer, which is has Hoffman and good old Adam H. here. They do the autopsy. They find that he swallowed a cassette tape, and so he's still Jigsaw from beyond the grave. Woo! Ah, shit. So, Jigsaw from beyond the grave. What's he gonna do? Well, he's gonna play another game. Woo! And it involves Daniel Rigg, who is having issues with his wife. She's going to stay with her mom, so she's out of here. Bye, Tracy. See you in another movie, hopefully. And as Daniel Rigg is going about solving what's going on, he ends up getting put into a game. And I will say, this game is a new kind of thing, because his game moves from location to location to location. All the while learning, after Hoffman has been abducted, that Peter Strom and Lindsay Perez, who work with the FBI, are interrogating Jill Tuck to be like, hey, where's your husband? What's he doing? How's he, what's his deal? And Jill Tuck tells the story of how John Kramer became how John Kramer became John Jig, John Jekyllheimer Jig. Well, once upon a time, get out of here, Daniel. Once upon a time, Jill Tuck opened a clinic, and it was his idea, and blah, 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 who cares? And she had a miscarriage because a druggie named Cecil really messed her up when he was getting drugs, and then so John went off the deep end, got diagnosed with cancer, tried to kill himself in a car accident. None of that worked, but apparently a saw to the throat did. Well, Cecil gets put in the very first Jigsaw trap, which is essentially just a chair with some barbed wire. Real low tech, no electricity needed, no WD-40 needed. You just kind of nicked the guy to death until he got so angry he pulled himself out and threw himself into another pit of barbed wire, and like that's kind of it. Very tame death for the guy that caused his child to be miscarried, but you know, I guess that's it. Okay, we're just gonna squish up Cecil here. Get out of here, Cecil. You're a shitty person to believe. So Strom and Lindsay are following Rig because they realize Rig is in a game. Rig's game starts with meeting Brenda, who's in a really gnarly trap. Her hair is in like this crank, and Rig has to like free her from the crank before her scalp gets torn off, and he just barely does it. And then she grabs a knife and tries to kill him, and so he throws her some glass and she bleeds out because apparently her part of the game was to try and kill Rig. And this whole scenario is just like Jigsaw saying like, you can't save some people. You know if you keep saving people the way you save them, they're not actually gonna be saved. They're just gonna keep doing it again. And Rig is like, fuck that. So we learn that Art, who is a lawyer who represented someone Rig punched way back in the day, Art, he is currently running Rig's game, but in the same way Zepp was running it instead of Amanda, so he's being forced to run it. And the participants in the game involve Hoffman, who is tied to an electric chair, and Matthews, who is all bedraggled and has very clearly been prisoner for a very long time. So, Rig only has a certain amount of time to come and save his co-workers, his friend Eric, and his Mark Hoffman. And so Rig is going all around, and you know, Strom and Perez are trying to catch up, and it's not really super effective. Fisk is not, he's there, but like he's like, keep me in the loop, and then he's around for a little bit more, but he doesn't really serve much a purpose. So then we get to the next victim, Ivan L., who's just a real crappy person. He raped a bunch of ladies and stuff and got away with it. I mean, it's just fucking absolute slimeball. And Daniel has to put him in his own game, and so he does, and Ivan decides to rip off his own arm, and then I think his head gets crushed. So Ivan's dead, and I hope you learned your lesson, Rig. I don't know. And then by the time he gets to Morgan and Rex, who were a married couple, and they were skewered, and one had to pull out their things to save the other, and Morgan, who was abused by Rex constantly, just messed him the hell up. She was like, okay, yeah, no, I gotta pull out these spikes. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna be in a lot of pain, but I mean, hey, he's gonna die. So Rex dies, and Morgan gets freed, because by then, you know, Jill Tuck's around, I guess. Strom and Perez are catching up, and someone accidentally, as you can see, the very aptly named CSI photographer here. See if we can't get that. CSI photographer accidentally triggers the trap and gets herself just run right through the neck right there. So, you know, there's another dead one. And they're on their way. But after that, Perez gets like the Billy doll is there, and it blows up in her face and messes her all up. And the last thing she says to Strom is, Hoffman, Detective Hoffman. So Perez is gone, and now Strom is on the way, and Rig is on the way. But you learn that Rig, well, gosh, he's not following the rules correctly. So he ends up accidentally... He comes in 1 second early, which detonates Art's thing, and it kills Art. And then Rig himself gets shot, and so he's bleeding out. And then I'm not going to go too into detail with what happens to Matthews, but he's also for sure dead. And you wonder what happened to Hoffman? Well, Hoffman was in on it. That's right, Hoffman this whole time has been Jigsaw's second acolyte, or disciple, or whatever, so he's been manipulating it the whole time. But wait a minute, he got the tape at the very beginning. Well, it turns out it wasn't at the very beginning, because Strom, who's coming here to stop Rig, runs into Jeff. Because Saw 4 and 3 were happening simultaneously. So Jeff kills John Kramer again, and Peter Strom sees this, and Jeff tries to go after him. Peter Strom shoots him, so farewell, Jeff, we hardly knew ye. And so now it's just Strom in the building with Hoffman, who we know now is a traitor. And after the death of Amanda Young and John Kramer, I guess he's the only Jigsaw left. More like Kaufman. Okay, now we're in Saw V, or Saw 5, So here's the problem with Saw 5. There is a main trap going throughout the whole thing, like the first 4 movies, but it doesn't matter. I guess it matters. I mean, it involves, like, Jill Tuck revealing more information, and there's this reporter, and she just reveals the scam that these 4 people took part in, and these 3 people died in the trap, and it's like, oh, big deal, oh no, and then these 2 get away, and eventually they just go and manage to live with their actions. That's the bulk of the film, and it's boring. It's really, really boring. The best part of the film is all this stuff. So, Peter Strom, who's just killed Jeff, ends up getting himself in a trap. And the trap is a box around his head that is filling with water. And so he realizes the only way to get out of the trap is to stab himself in the neck and breathe that way while the water is, around his neck until he gets found. As he leaves, Detective Hoffman is carrying Corbett, the daughter, out, which we now know he knows where she was because he was in on the trap, and the last movie was in sequence with the third movie. So he hands Corbett Denlin to a police officer. No one else made it. And then Peter comes out and says, I made it. And Peter's still suspicious of Mark because, Perez's last words were your name. Any reason why? And Strom had actually also told his supervisor, Dan E., who we'll refer to as Danny, he has a mustache, that he believes that there was a second accomplice. There was Jigsaw, there was Amanda, and then there was another one because Jigsaw was sick and he couldn't do a lot of the stuff physically, and Amanda couldn't either. Well, the whole time all this is happening, we learn that, gosh dang, Mark had a sister who was killed before the beginning of the movie. Pretty bad and sad, and that's how she died. Not really, but it doesn't really matter. And it was by Seth Baxter. And Seth Baxter, he is just a real piece of shit. And so Mark decides to, after he gets out early, Mark is enraged at the justice system, so he decides, I'm going to copy the Jigsaw murderer to punish you. And that's actually the opening track of the film. It involves him, having to put torment on himself, and then he completes the sacrifice required for the trap, and the trap doesn't stop, and then he looks at the person who's watching in the eye, who's Mark, we learn later, and says, but I won the game. And then he gets flayed to death. I don't know, he's a jerk. He had swastika tattoo, so fuck him. And after that, good old son of a bitch, John Kramer, who is not dead in this flashback, but he's still dead in the current timeline, tells Mark, listen, if you're gonna be my protege, you've gotta keep your head straight and all that. All the while, Jill is enacting John's last requests in his will or whatever, and I don't know if serial killers get like their will read or anything, but well, it's a willing suspension of disbelief for that part. If I can believe a woman's rib cage gets ripped out of her like that and her intestines fall out, I can believe John Kramer set up a will. And she's just running errands, essentially. It's not super interesting, but she's not a really super interesting character. And so we see flashbacks of how Mark actually helped John the whole time, which, you know, kind of discredits Amanda's, you know, part in it. Like, Mark has actually been there longer and stuff, and it's just like, I've been Jigsaw's protege longer than you, Amanda. Wonder if that'll be a theme. And we also learned that the reason Amanda was bribed into shooting Lynn from Saw 3 is because Mark knew that she was the one who convinced poor old Cecil here to go in and break in and get the drugs because she was a drug addict, which made Jill Tuck miscarriage, which made John Crane return into Jigsaw in the first place. But Cecil's dead, and now Amanda's dead, and now John Kramer's dead, and by the time good old Peter Strom managed to get a hold of Mark Hoffman, he built another trap, and my beautiful prince, Peter Strom, pretty much one of the only redeeming things in this movie, he gets folded to death. And I mean, like, you know the Star Wars trash compactor scene where he's like, 3PO, let's turn off all the garbage compactors. Well, Peter Strom did not have a 3PO. Rest in peace. May a flight of angels sing thee to thy rest. And remember, no cell phones in the diner.
You seem to be adapting to those shackles.
Oh, well. They're terribly comfortable. I think in the future everyone will be wearing them.
Oh, I can guarantee it. These transitions, a little bit more confusing. I'm still trapped, though. Just with the flashlight, at least.
Okay. Oh, jeez. All right, so the first trap is two predatory insurance people. One name's Eddie and one's Simone, and they have to, like, cut pieces of themselves off and have it weighed so one of them doesn't die and the other one dies. Eddie's a bit of a chonky boy, so he starts cutting off Flab, and Simone just goes full force and cuts off her own arm, killing Eddie instantly. Boom, Eddie's dead. Simone survives and taken away. Dan and Sashi, you know, they're at the scene, and then they see Mark Hoffman's there, and they're like, hey, but they're acting kind of like it's like they pretty much know, but it's still confusing. And they said, wait a minute, we've got prints on this, and it's Peter Strom's prints, because apparently he has been doing Jigsaw traps now. Yeah, I don't think so, but he's still technically missing because he was squished to death, and Mark took his fingerprints and put them all every which way. Meanwhile, we learn more about Jill Tuck's really boring life and how she and insurance person William Eastman, well, they work together, and oh, god damn it, John Kramer, he asks William in the past when he's still alive, how do you measure a life? How do you come up with a system? You know, I guess to get pointers or something. And William says, like, oh, I got a formula and all that. Yuck. And that formula is what decides in the Abbott family to make sure Harold Abbott dies of cancer. And I don't know. So cancer got Harold, everybody. I'm sorry. It was a long time coming. But because, you know, he had a pre-existing condition, which was bullshit, now they gotta grow up without fathers. Brenda? I think it was Brandon. I think that's incorrect. Anyway, doesn't matter. So, John Kramer, I guess, enlists his last wish of Jill putting in a game putting Hoffman through a game while Hoffman is putting William through a game. And Perez isn't dead, I guess. But it turns out that the tape that Hoffman left for the guy that killed her sister had too much of his voice on it. And while William's going through the main trap, the feds are closing in on Hoffman. They know. And Jill Tuck is shortly behind, just kind of riding on the coattails of the whole franchise. And it's really not her fault. It's just she seems like a last-minute addition to every story she's in. Actually, William Eastman gets kidnapped, and a security guard gets knocked out, but we don't hear anything about him dying or being okay. So I guess once he's knocked unconscious, he just disappears from reality. And Eastman has to breathe with Hank, who is the janitor brother there who's being punished for some reason. Hank's a lifelong smoker, though, and every time they breathe, they, I don't know, press themselves to death more, and Hank can't hold his breath, so Hank gets crunched. Next, he comes up to Addie and Alan. Alan's his, his assistant, and Addie's his secretary, and he has to pick which one to save, and so he kills Alan, even though he's just a young kid, but he's kind of wasting it, and Addie's just a sweet old woman. So Addie gets away. William saved Addie. Then he has to guide Debbie, who's another person who works, get out of here, another person who works for him, through this maze, otherwise she gets impaled, and he sort of does, but then when he throws her the key, she misses, and she gets impaled anyway, so I guess all that was worth nothing. And absolutely the most infuriating, long, lengthy trap is the carousel trap, where 6 people are on a carousel. There's a shotgun loaded with 6 shots, but there's only 2 ways to have the trigger pull up along the carousel, and all these people are on the carousel, and William has to stab his arm twice to save 2 people. So Josh, David, Gina, and Aaron die. There's like a moment where like someone's like, look at me, or whatever. It's really lengthy, really long, and really stupid. Then William gets into the last room. Also, that reporter from the other one's there, but she doesn't, I don't know, she's not, she gets away. She doesn't die. No, it's William's, was she William's sister? I just read the synopsis and I still don't remember, to just tell you how awful this movie was. So William gets in the trap that also happens to have the surviving family members of what's his name and his sister. Addie gets away, I guess. Emily and Shelby get away, I guess. The CSI people or the FBI people say like, hey, look at that, it's not Peter Strahm. So you've got 3 trained FBI agents, and Hoffman chooses in the FBI thing to kill them all. He kills them all. He kills them all, and he gets away with it. It's not a dream sequence or anything, but Hoffman's officially on the run, and Jill Tuck puts the reverse bear trap on him, which we see he barely gets out of, no pun intended, while as opposed to William, who gets melted on the inside by acid. It's again, all the gore and deaths are cool, it's just really stupid. So Tara and Brenda and Brandon get away, and Jill is now being hunted by Mark, and I guess Strahm didn't have anything to do with it. Sorry, buddy. And the time it took me to describe that scene still took less time than the carousel trap actually in the movie. So, Saw 3D, or Saw the final chapter, starts with Dr. Gordon, actually, believe it or not. He got away and Jigsaw saved his life, and then other things happened, I'm sure. We mainly follow 2 people, which is Jill Tuck, who has realized that Mark Hoffman has survived the reverse bear trap and is absolutely going to come for revenge, and Bobby up here, who is a Jigsaw survivor, or so he claims, as he's interviewed by Donna, who we see and then never see again. And then we see that Bobby's support group, Nina, Kale, and Suzanne, are all like, yeah, you gotta keep telling him, but they know he actually wasn't a Jigsaw survivor, he lied. His wife, however, Joyce, does not know that, because he knew there was a lot of money behind it. All while this is happening, you get some neo-Nazis who die, and, you know, which is fun, because, you know, fuck Nazis. And the opening trap includes Brad, Ryan, and Dina. Brad is on one side, Ryan's on the other, Dina's in the middle, and they got to choose to either kill one another or kill Dina, who's been 2-timing them both. They decide to say kill Dina, and I guess they they get away okay. It actually, the opening trap feels like a gimmick, like in the world, but I guess it's not. All the while, Mark Hoffman is just going nuts to try and get to Jill Tuck, which involves Matt G., who is the lead investigator. He's the main cop in the movie, and he sucks and he's boring, and he dies, and Palmer dies, and Rogers dies, and Adam H., the ME, who operated on Jigsaw, he dies. Also, Mark Hoffman can get to Jill Tuck. And Mark Hoffman does get to Jill Tuck. Well, we learn that Bobby D, he has to save his publicist team, who have allowed him to lie, and he doesn't. Actually, earlier in the last one when I said it, William threw the key and it missed, it was actually for one of these fellas. But it's like a hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil kind of thing, and he messes up all 3 times. And to save his wife, who's also in a trap, even though she didn't do anything wrong, but hey, Hoffman just likes to go wanton with all that stuff. Wanton? Hoffman is not a good Jigsaw. Anyway, Bobby has to pierce his man boobs and climb up some chains to save his wife. He messes up, she burns to death. No, Bobby does. Oh, gee whiz. Oh. There's a support group where there was an ex-Jigsaw survivor named Sydney, and that's when you learn Hoffman was at or Dr. Gordon was at the group, and then there's a flashback of son of a goddamn John Kramer talking to Bobby, saying like, "Oh, we've met. I don't need the book." It's actually a really good scene, all things considered. Then Hoffman succeeds in killing Jill Tuck with the reverse bear trap. Finally, we get to see how it looks, and it was worth the wait. It's a grisly, possibly the most brutal kill in the whole franchise. So Jill Tuck is now off the board. If she's anything like her husband, she'll show up again. Fortunately, Hoffman gets knocked out, and we learn that one of the errands that Jill Tuck ran, in John's will, was by Gordon to say, "Hey, listen, you're my greatest asset. Protect Jill, and if you can't protect Jill, immediately avenge her." And we learn that Gordon, just like Gordon, has actually been Jigsaw's accomplice even longer than Hoffman. And so 2 pig people, who we learn are Brad and Ryan, lock Hoffman up. They give him he tries to grab the saw because he's locked in the first trap, which is where everyone loves to go. And Gordon kicks the saw away, saying, "I don't think so." Then he says, "Game over," shuts the door. And Hoffman is for sure trapped in there forever. Or is he? And so that's Saw 3D, the final chapter. So at this point, is it possible that John Kramer's a ghost?
Nah, we don't roll like that.
How do I know you're not possessed by a ghost?
Why don't you try me, Buster?
Alright, it checks out.
Where the hell did you get that thing?
Don't you worry. Okay, yeah, most of the production budget went into the puppet, but I think it was worth it. So, maybe I'll just clock out here. Okay, so Jigsaw, which is essentially Saw 8. It involves another time skip. There's one that's happening when Jigsaw was still alive, right when he started doing traps. So John Kramer's still alive, and he puts a lot of these people through the trap, but we're meant to believe that they're going through the trap concurrently with the main plot line, which is with the cops and Edgar Munson. He gets shot through the head, and there's a new Jigsaw murderer, and it is interesting if they didn't do this twist, like 3 times already. So you got Eleanor and Logan, who are autopsy morticians. We're learning there's a new Jigsaw, and then the detectives are looking for him too, and Eleanor thinks it might be Halloran and Logan, and there's a bunch of intrigue on who it is. Well, it's Logan. When Logan was a med tech, before he went to the army, he accidentally switched John Kramer's cancer x-ray screening, so he didn't get diagnosed until way later. And Logan, so he puts Logan in the game that's set in the past, but then saves him because he doesn't think it's fair for him to die, and a lot of other people here die. Matthew actually kills himself because he thinks he kills the baby, which is Anna's baby, but Anna actually had severe postpartum and killed the baby, blamed it on Matthew, and John knew the truth because John was the neighbor, and he was upset because, he lost a kid, so... Everyone else really doesn't have... Mitch sold a bad motorcycle to John's nephew, and then he puts them in the game, and Anna messes up, and these 2 guys... Anna messes up, and Carly and Mitch eat it, and Anna accidentally shoots herself in the head because the keys backfire on her, and Ryan starves to death. And then Keith is looking for John Kramer, even though he's dead and buried. And Logan and Halloran get put into a game themselves, and that's when Logan reveals that Halloran, he knows about Halloran being a dirty cop, so he gets lasered to death. And then Eleanor, who is a really interesting character, gets away to warn Hunt, I guess. And Logan, much like Dr. Gordon and potentially Hoffman, he gets away. He gets away. So, that's Jigsaw. John Kramer didn't come back. But maybe he will in Spiral? Nah, just kidding. I got the people here for Spiral. You should check it out. Might end up learning a thing or two. Or not. Aha! Now I gotcha.
Wait, no.
How did you worry
how did you
about
escape
it,
my
Billy?
trap?
You
How
and me
am
are
I
gonna
trapped
have
in my trap?
Nice long talk, and I'm gonna figure out how you got me in here and who you're working for.
You haven't read me my marionette rights.
Puppet laws don't apply here, you son of a bitch.
How long are you going to interrogate me for?
Well, until I find something else to talk about.
How long will that take?
Probably about a month. Oh, sure, do the transitions, they said. The Saw movies all have transitions. It'll be fun, they said. Hey everyone, Avery Kolchak here, and I am just pleased as punch to start this little adventure into the world of horror. Worlds of Horror? Not sure. The Billy puppet is the Trick or Treat Studios puppet. They were very, gracious as to allow me to credit them, and I really recommend getting them before they sell out. They sold out really, really quickly last time, and he's a puppet, not a marionette. Although the new movie has a marionette. Have you seen it yet? Spiral. I'm really excited. And Trick or Treat Studios announced that they were making a replica of that marionette, among other things. So definitely keep a lookout there and go see Spiral in theaters. I saw it opening night, first showing, and I was blown away. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and interrogate this lovely fella here, and in the description, I'm going to go ahead and put the link to find the nearest Red Cross Blood Donation Center. Red Cross Blood Donation Center near you, so you can donate some blood and help out. You know, it always feels good. I mean, it feels woozy first, and then it feels good. And I've got the crisis helpline in the description as well, because as someone who has used it frequently, and as someone who, even at the mention of the word suicide, used to become suicidal, I want you to have that access, because even if you hate this video and stuff, I want you to live on, so you can tell me to my face that you hate it. You belong here, okay? Every one of us belongs here. Even Billy.
If you're not afraid of me, what are you afraid of?
Oh, just 3 things. Well, things. It's. And the boogeyman.